Welcome to Scary Mary Asia. The haunting eyewitness accounts. If part 1 was unsettling, this is where the story turns darker. Because what makes Tat Tak school so infamous isn't just its history, it's what people say still happens inside. Over the years, countless stories have surfaced from those who dared to enter, and nearly every single one of them ends in fear. Let me tell you about one of the earliest accounts. Back in the late 1970s, long after the school had closed, a group of teenagers from Yuen Long decided to sneak in one night. You know how it goes. Young, reckless, wanting to prove they weren't afraid of ghosts. They brought flashlights, cigarettes, and a cocky attitude. The moment they stepped onto the school grounds, though, that bravado started to fade. The air felt heavy, unnaturally still, like even the crickets had gone silent. The classrooms were coated in dust, the chalkboard still faintly marked with old lessons. Chairs were scattered, as if the students had run out mid. One of the boys joked, "Maybe the teacher's still here. Maybe she's waiting for us." The others laughed nervously, but then they heard it. From the end of the hallway came the faint sound of footsteps. Slow, deliberate, heels clicking against the broken tiles. The group froze. Their flashlights darted toward the sound, but the corridor was empty. And yet, the steps kept coming. Then, one of them screamed. Because at the far end of the hall, just barely visible in the dim light, was a figure in red. A woman, her head bowed forward, her long black hair covering her face. The boys ran. They bolted out of the school, dropping their cigarettes and flashlights, never daring to look back. When they told their story later, every single one swore they'd seen her. But it wasn't just thrill-seeking kids who had these encounters. Even adults, grown men and women, were shaken by what they experienced there. In the early 1990s, a taxi driver reported picking up a woman late at night near Yuen Long. She was dressed entirely in red. She asked him to take her to the Tat Tak school. The driver hesitated, but against his better judgment, he agreed. As they drove through the dark countryside roads, he noticed something odd in the rearview mirror. The woman's face seemed pale, almost gray, her lips a deep shade of purple, and worst of all, her feet weren't touching the floor. Terrified, he slammed the brakes. The car skidded to a stop. When he turned around, the back seat was empty. Shaking, he refused to ever drive near Tat Tak again. And to this day, some cab drivers in Hong Kong still refuse fares if they mention the school. But perhaps the most terrifying stories come from the ghost hunters and curious visitors who entered in recent years. A group of urban explorers once went in with cameras, hoping to capture proof of the supernatural. At first, nothing happened. Just long, empty corridors and the sound of their own nervous laughter. But when they reached one of the classrooms, the door suddenly slammed shut behind them, hard enough to rattle the windows. Panic set in. They pulled at the handle, but it wouldn't budge. And then, they heard it. A woman humming, a low, broken tune, like a lullaby, drifting from the corner of the room. They swung their flashlights around wildly. Nothing was there, but the humming grew louder, circling them as if something unseen was moving closer, closer. Finally, the door burst open on its own. They didn't wait to question it. They sprinted out, vowing never to return. Later, when they checked their recordings, they discovered something chilling. The humming had been captured on tape. And yet, the most famous apparition remains the red-dressed woman. Visitors describe her the same way. Over and over, long black hair obscuring her face, a body swaying gently, as though still hanging from the rope. Eyes, when you do catch them, wide, lifeless, and filled with rage. Some say she doesn't. They hustapiar. She follows you, walking just behind you, close enough that you feel the air shift, until you finally turn around, and she's right there. By the mid-1990s, Tat Tak school had become so feared that even police officers avoided it. There are stories of patrolmen being called to investigate disturbances nearby. Only 2 radioed in and refused to enter. One officer reportedly said, "I'll deal with criminals, but not with that school." And that tells you something. doesn't it? When even the people trained to face danger would rather turn away. But the truth is, Tat Tak School's hauntings aren't just about ghosts. They're about the land itself. Remember what I said earlier. The soil there is soaked in blood, and locals believe the spirits of those killed in wartime are still bound to that ground. That the red-dressed teacher wasn't alone, but joined by countless others who died in anger and pain. So when you walk those corridors at night, you're not just walking through a ruin. You're walking through a graveyard, and the dead do not like to be disturbed. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to the channel and don't forget to like, share, and comment.